Hey, what's up guys? Today we're going to talk about how do you automate your decision-making process when it comes to AI. So basically, most people right now are using AI to produce a lot of different things, which is great. AI speeds up so many different workflows, but they're still stuck in this pattern wherein they look at the output of the AI and then they review whether or not that particular output is good enough. The problem with that is you're still the bottleneck. AI is producing all your content faster, sure, or any kind of output faster, but you are still manually reviewing all these different outputs to see whether or not it's good enough to post or passes certain quality standards. What we really want to do is also automate our decision-making process. And this goes through like a huge amount of tasks. So for example, you can use it to like outsource your decision-making process for resumes, or outsource your decision-making process for approving clips or videos, right? So there's a lot of workflows wherein AI produces some output, but then we want to be able to grade that output so that we know if it's good enough, right? So this is something that I've been working on, right, the past few weeks. I created this YouTube channel just for fun, trying to analyze the crypto markets. I already do a lot of this for myself, so I was thinking, why not do it for a wider audience? So here you can see all of these thumbnails are actually generated by AI, and I've also been doing like LinkedIn posts just to show what I've been working on to the wider community. So basically, yeah, all of these LinkedIn posts come from like videos that I record. So like for example, this recording, I record myself, and then I just want to be able to spread that information in all my different channels and in different formats, so I don't have to go through repackaging all of this, right? I could do it, but then that takes a lot of time, and I want to automate that entire process. A bunch of times that I tried to do this, it created a lot of like bad AI slop posts. And so what usually happens is I would have to look at the post, tell the AI to edit it, look at the post, tell the AI to edit it, do that process, and then be able to post the post. What I really want is to have an AI that is a replacement of me, so they would actually do that review process instead of me, and therefore I only have to participate in the original creation of the idea, and then it does everything. So for example, this LinkedIn post, this was validated by an AI and it was posted by an AI. So how does this work? So currently, this is what most people do as like the old workflow, right? So there is some input. It can be image, text, anything you can think of, and then an LLM produces some output. And the current bottleneck right now is a human reviews that output and then checks, and then they decide to either post it or do some other activity with that post, right? So what we really want to do is remove this part of the loop, right? We want to be able to have an AI automate this so that you only have to think about the input, and then an AI does this instead of a human. The thing is, I think the problem is people try to just keep making the AI do it without thinking of a process on how to do this kind of automation with an AI, right? So this is what I decided to work on. So there's like 3 steps to fully automating this process. So the step 1 is, it's the same thing. The input goes in, the LLM produces some output, and we call this initial LLM the generator, and then the human reviews that output, right? So it's actually the same process, except instead of using that output right away, we actually tried to save all those decisions that we made so that another LLM, which we call the evaluator, can actually learn all the decision factors that we did, so that we can actually tune this evaluator to become the replacement of the human review. So think of this as like onboarding, right? So if you didn't want to do this in the traditional old model, you would literally hire someone to do the review process. But for example, the review process is very subjective, right? The way I review a thumbnail, for example, might be different from how the person I hired would review the thumbnail. So what you really have to do is train that person. Even if this wasn't an AI, if you just hired someone off a job board, you would still have to tell him, okay, what were the decisions I made in order to pass this particular thumbnail, or in order to pass this particular output, right? You would have to have that dialogue or that conversation with another human so that he can know how you have done it, right? And it's the same thing with AI. What we want to do is, at the first few times, we're going through this process, evaluating these things, and saving all of these decision processes, so the next time an AI swaps for you, it learned all of your decision-making process, right? So after this part where you're just tuning the evaluator, you can then use this evaluator to sub in for the human. But before that, you also want the generation to get better, right? So at the start, the generation is bad, for example, you would be failing the generator 90% of the time, right? But in a normal back and forth process, without this AI thing, you would slightly tune the prompt, get a better prompt, and then eventually the generator is only like failing 10% of the time. That's the same thing we want to do, but we want to be able to systematize that entire process so that in the future, it's automatic, right? So how do we do that? So once we've trained this evaluator, you can actually go to step 2, which is using the evaluator to tune your generator. So basically, the generator produces some process, and then the evaluator evaluates it, gives it a score of pass or fail, and then another AI tunes the generator prompt so that in the future, the generator fails less, similar to how people go back and forth tuning these prompts, right? And then in step 3, it's already fully productionized. So you have the input, the LLM produces an output, the evaluator reviews the output. So instead of the human, this is just the stand-in evaluator, and then we decide to post it. So that's how I've been thinking about it. And at the start, this tuning process was actually kind of hard because it's hard to find the optimal prompt that produces your output. But an AI can actually do this entire loop itself. So this is the platform that I built. I built this for myself in order to do these postings in LinkedIn. And I haven't done it for my thumbnails yet, but I have also done it for like the short clipping. So for my long form, I have an AI look at interesting parts and then clip those parts to post as clips, right? So that clipping process, or if it's interesting or not, is something that I went through this process as well. Because sometimes the parts aren't interesting, or sometimes there are like cut-off words that weren't cleanly cut. So I use this process as well. Anyway, how does this work? So for example, these posts that I was showing you, these are all posts by AI. These are all posts by AI, and these are all generated. But you can see that for the earlier versions, so this is, for example, the prompt template that produces, a specific output LinkedIn post. So how does this work, basically? Basically, this is the prompt that goes into the LLM. So you can just think of Claude or ChatGPT. And then this is the output that they output, right? And then I basically just review this, and I want to see if I'll post it or not, right? So this is the first version of it. So this is the prompt. Basically, this part is just the transcript of the video. But basically, the prompt is just this first part. So look at the following transcript, and the transcript. And then, it just asks, if you were to translate these thoughts into a series of posts, how would you communicate it? And then I gave it like a format, like a JSON format, so that my program can read it, right? And so what does this do? So this basically outputted this. This is the post that it's saying. So we're at version 1, right? So at the very first version, you can see this is what it came up with. So if you just read it, it says, hiring is leverage. You pay someone less than the value of their time that creates for you, and the delta is your gain, right? And then AI is the same equation, but with 2 differences most people miss. 1, cost to actually inspect the work. Most businesses are using AI like a vending machine, one monolithic prompt. So this is basically saying how, it's one monolithic prompt and you want to decompose it into modular steps. So what I didn't like about this post is, 1, it sounds very like AI. And for me, what AI sounding like was like is not this, it's this pattern, right? So for example, here you can say, so for example, here it says not AI as feature, AI as an operating system underneath the workflow. I find those like repetitive alliterations, or not X, Y, is X, therefore Y. I find those patterns kind of AI-y. So I failed that for, I want to fail that for that part. And I also don't like this part. This verbiage sounds like you want to exploit people, and I don't think that's the point. The point is basically you want to create AI so that you can leverage more of your work rather than reduce the value of people. You're not directly using AI to reduce the value of people. You're just technically using it to amplify your work. And so I don't really like the verbiage of this. So after I read this, what I did was I created an evaluator. And what's an evaluator? So this is basically an evaluator. So you create like all these different criteria. So now I have tone, palleability, intention, and purpose, right? So you can see in my generation, I have tone, fail, palleability, fail, intention, purpose, fail. And so you can personally define as many criteria as you want, but each criteria has to be very specific, right? It can't be vague. You can't just say like, at the start, it was kind of vague because I didn't get it. But for example, AI sounding. What does AI sounding look like? So I like codified it to the not X, not Y pattern. I find that very AI sounding. And you can make more definitions of that, but as long as the definition is specific. Because if I hired someone, for example, and I just told them, hey, don't make the text that you produce AI sounding. That doesn't mean anything, right? You need to have a clear definition of what that is. So that's what I do. You just codify these things. What does valuability mean? What does tone mean? What does intention and purpose mean? You score all these things once they're generated, because you would score them anyway, right? The generator is going to generate stuff that you were going to post anyway. So you just formalize your thought process and you score it. And then you can actually tune this. So what does this look like? So again, in the process, this is what it looks like. So when I was tuning the evaluator, you can see the black line is the average pass or fail, right, of the ground truth. You can see it's going up. Right? So eventually the evaluator is like 94 or 95% in alignment with what I thought would pass or fail for these different evaluations. And then here also you can see the generator becomes better and better at generating an output that would pass my taste or subjective taste, right? So what does that even look like, right? I just showed you a bunch of numbers, but what does that look like in practice? So again, going back to the generator, you guys can see, for example, yeah, this was the original output text from the transcript. That same transcript, if we look at the latest version, right, just looks like this. So this sounded a lot more polished. It didn't have like the tone of like diminishing human value, and it's yeah. So if you read this sounded more like me, so I would have passed everything. So I haven't labeled this because, you know, I mean, I don't have to label everything, but the generator did pass this for the LinkedIn post. So basically, that's how I approach it. So again, the previous version is LLM output, human review, decide to post, and if you go through this entire process, now you have the LLM output, evaluator reviews, and decide to post. And so now I can actually scale up my automation process. I don't have to review every single output. I just have to be there, review a bunch of them at the start, hand over that to my employee, which is like the LLM, and then it learns how to review it the way that I review it. And so I've been able to automate scaling this channel. So then the things that I've automated so far is the shorts. So you can see all of these shorts, how it identifies the clipping. I've reviewed that, and also my LinkedIn posts. So yeah, at the start, the shorts were pretty bad. Like it would have like ums and, you know, all of those thought breaks, but eventually, after reviewing it and telling the LLM, I was able to get the evaluator and the generator to the point where it doesn't have that. So yeah, everything's pretty much automated, and this can apply to almost anything, right? So if you have a business and you find a human bottleneck at one of the AI generation process, you can actually use an evaluator to tune all of that so that it becomes automatic in the future. So that's basically it, guys. That's what I wanted to share to you today. That's basically what I've been working on the past few weeks. I'm gonna try to scale it up. So right now I don't have it for my thumbnails. You know, thumbnails are basically just also some input, LLM output, if it's good enough. So I'm gonna try to automate that as well. And yeah, if you guys like this content, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.